Narnia in Danger, Jarmo Palamaki. Chapter 1. Polly had always cherished the memories of her adventures in Narnia, a magical land filled with talking animals, enchanted forests, and epic battles. Today she was visiting her dear friend Diggory, and the excitement bubbled within her like a fizzy drink. It had been years since they had stepped foot in that wondrous realm, but the memories were as vivid as ever. As Polly approached Diggory's house, she recalled the day they first discovered the wardrobe that led to Narnia. The thrill of stepping through the door into a world where anything was possible was an experience she would never forget. Diggory had been her partner in crime, and together they had faced challenges that tested their courage and friendship. When she knocked on the door, Diggory greeted her with a warm smile. "Polly, it's so good to see you," he exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. The familiar scent of his mother's baking wafted through the air, making Polly's stomach rumble. They settled in the cozy living room, surrounded by books and artifacts from their past adventures. "Do you remember the creation of Narnia?" Polly asked, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. Diggory nodded, his expression turning serious. "How could I forget? Aslan's song, the way the trees and rivers sprang to life. It was magical." They spent the afternoon reminiscing about their adventures, laughing at their youthful naivety and marveling at the lessons they had learned. But as the sun began to set, a sense of longing filled the air. "What if we could go back?" Polly suggested, her heart racing at the thought. The two adventurous friends, Polly and Diggory, set out on a bright, sunny afternoon. Their hearts were filled with excitement as they made their way to the garden where an extraordinary apple tree stood tall and proud. This was no ordinary tree. It bore the fruit of magic, a seed that Diggory had brought back from the mystical land of Narnia. As they approached the tree, Polly marveled at its apples that glowed like jewels, each one radiating a warmth that seemed to beckon them closer. "Do you think they're as delicious as they look?" Polly asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "I hope so," Diggory replied, a grin spreading across his face. "But remember, these apples are special. They hold the magic of Narnia, and we must treat them with respect." Polly nodded, her curiosity piqued. They had heard tales of the tree's origins, how it had grown from a single seed planted in the rich soil of Narnia, nurtured by the enchanting magic of the land. It was said that the apples could grant wisdom, heal wounds, or even fulfill a heartfelt wish. However, the tree, once vibrant and full of life, now stood with its leaves drooping and its branches bare, as if it were mourning a lost friend. Polly, her brow furrowed with concern, reached out to touch the rough bark. "Diggory, something isn't right. Look at it. It's not just the tree. It feels like there's a shadow hanging over Narnia." Diggory nodded, his heart heavy. "I can feel it too. When I returned from Narnia, everything was so bright and full of magic. But now, it's as if the very essence of Narnia is fading." He stepped closer, reaching out to touch the rough bark. Memories of their adventures in Narnia flooded back. The warmth of Aslan's presence, the laughter of friends, and the thrill of discovery. But now, all he felt was a chilling emptiness. Chapter 2. As they stood in silence, a sudden gust of wind swept through the garden, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down their spines. The air crackled with energy, and before they could react, a whirlwind enveloped them. They clutched each other tightly, their hearts racing as the familiar sensation of being pulled through the fabric of worlds surrounded them. In an instant, they found themselves standing in the lush, vibrant land of Narnia. The colors were more vivid than they remembered, but an unsettling stillness hung in the air. The trees stood tall, but their leaves whispered secrets of worry. The sky, usually bright and welcoming, was overcast, casting a shadow over the land. "Where are we?" Polly asked, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. "I think we're near the orchard," Diggory replied, scanning their surroundings. "But something feels off. We need to find out what's happening." Determined to uncover the source of this change, they set off towards the heart of Narnia, where the fabled apple tree stood. A tree said to hold the power to protect the realm from darkness. After what felt like hours of navigating through the enchanting woods, they finally stumbled upon a clearing. There in the center stood the majestic apple tree, its branches heavy with golden fruit, shimmering in the sunlight. But their joy quickly turned to horror as they witnessed a young man, fierce and determined, swinging an axe with relentless force. "Yeah, stop!" Diggory shouted, his voice echoing through the clearing. The young man paused, his eyes narrowing as he turned to face them, the axe hovering midair. "Why should I?" he challenged, his voice dripping with defiance. "This tree is a blight on this land. It must fall." Polly stepped forward, her heart racing. "You don't understand. That tree is the guardian of Narnia. Without it, the balance will be destroyed." The young man scoffed, lowering his axe slightly. "Guardianship? It's just a tree. Power lies in strength, not in the roots of a mere plant." Diggory felt a surge of anger, but tempered it with reason. "It's not just a tree. It holds the magic that protects Narnia from darkness. If you cut it down, you'll unleash chaos." The young man hesitated, glancing back at the tree, then at the two children. "And what if I told you I seek to free Narnia from its chains? This tree is a symbol of oppression." Chapter 3. Polly and Diggory stood frozen, their hearts pounding in their chests as they watched the young man swing his axe with reckless abandon. The once magnificent apple tree, its branches heavy with golden fruit, was the very heart of Narnia's magic, a guardian of peace and prosperity. They had heard tales of its power, how it protected the land from darkness and despair. And now, here it was, being felled before their eyes. The young man swung his axe once more. With a heavy heave and a powerful blow, the ancient tree that had stood guard over Narnia for centuries finally succumbed to the relentless force. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the forest, a loud crash that reverberated in the hearts of those who witnessed it. Polly and Diggory stood frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. The great tree, a symbol of protection and magic, lay in ruins at their feet. They had come to Narnia seeking to save it, but now they felt an unsettling weight in the air, a sense of foreboding that wrapped around them like a thick fog. "What has he done?" Polly whispered, her voice trembling. The vibrant colors of Narnia seemed to dim, as if the land itself was mourning the loss of its guardian. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the remnants of the once mighty tree, Polly and Diggory stood in stunned silence. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut wood, a stark reminder of the sacrifice made for the sake of power. The young man who had wielded the axe walked away, his back turned, a silhouette against the fiery sky. He seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, oblivious to the consequences of his actions. "Did he really have to do that?" Polly whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and sorrow. Diggory, still processing the scene, could only shake his head. The beauty of Narnia had been intertwined with that tree, and now it felt as though a piece of their very souls had been severed. Just then a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the fading light. He was a boy, perhaps a few years older than Diggory, with tousled hair and a confident stride. His eyes sparkled with a hint of mischief, yet there was a depth to them that suggested he understood more than he let on. "Hello there," he called out, his voice warm and inviting. "I'm Tyrion, the younger son of the first king and queen of Narnia. I saw what just happened. You two look like you could use a friend." Polly and Diggory exchanged glances, their initial apprehension slowly melting away. "I'm Polly, and this is Diggory," Polly replied, her curiosity piqued. "Did you see him? The one who cut down the tree?" Tyrion nodded solemnly. "I did. It's a shame, really. That tree was a guardian of Narnia, a protector of all that is good here. But sometimes people don't realize what they're sacrificing until it's too late." Chapter 4. In the heart of a lush, green forest, where the sunlight filtered through the leaves like golden dust, Tyrion led Polly and Diggory to his quaint cottage. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming wildflowers, and the gentle rustle of the trees seemed to whisper secrets of old. As they entered the cozy abode, Tyrion's eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Thank you for coming," he said, motioning for them to sit around a rustic wooden table. "There's something I must share with you, something that has been hidden for far too long." Polly and Diggory exchanged curious glances, their hearts racing with anticipation. Tyrion took a deep breath, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "I am the younger son of the first king and queen of Narnia," he revealed, his gaze unwavering, "and the young man who cut down the great tree that once stood in the center of our beloved land is my older brother, Tyr." The revelation hung in the air like a heavy mist. Polly's eyes widened in disbelief while Diggory leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding tale. "But why would he do such a thing?" Diggory asked, his brow furrowed in concern. Tyrion's expression darkened as he recalled the events that had transpired. Tyr was always ambitious, longing for power and recognition. He believed that by cutting down the tree, he could harness its magic for himself. But in doing so, he unleashed chaos upon Narnia, and our family is now torn apart. Polly felt a pang of sympathy for Tyrion. "That must have been incredibly difficult for you," she said softly. "What happened to Tyr?" As Tyrion sat with Polly and Diggory, the flickering light of the campfire danced across their faces, illuminating the wonder in their eyes. The stars twinkled above, casting a magical glow over the land of Narnia, a realm filled with adventure and mystery. Tyrion took a deep breath, the weight of his words heavy on his heart. "My brother Tyr and I," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion, "are in the midst of preparing to become the new kings of Narnia. Now it falls to us after the passing of our parents." "What does that preparation involve?" Diggory asked, leaning forward, eager to absorb every detail. Tyrion smiled, grateful for their interest. "Part of our training involves getting acquainted with the different areas of Narnia. Each region has its own unique challenges and beauty. My brother Tyr has been tasked with exploring the northern territories, where the snow-capped mountains meet the vast, icy plains. It's a place of great majesty, but also great peril." Polly's eyes widened. "What kind of perils?" "Ah," Tyrion said, his expression turning serious. "The northern regions are home to creatures both wondrous and dangerous. There are giants, even hostile ones, and it has been told that that is the home of the evil witch." Diggory nodded, captivated by the tale. "And what about you? What will you be doing?" "I will be focusing on the southern areas," Tyrion replied, his voice filled with determination. "The lush forests and vibrant valleys where the people live in harmony with nature. I need to learn about their customs, their struggles, and their joys. It's essential for us to unite Narnia, to ensure that every creature feels heard and valued." Polly felt a surge of admiration for the brothers. "It sounds like a huge responsibility. Are you ready for it?" Tyrion paused, contemplating the weight of his future. "I hope to be. With the guidance of Aslan and the support of friends, I believe we could have brought about a new era for Narnia, one filled with peace and prosperity." Chapter 5. Polly leaned against the wall of the cottage, her brow furrowed in curiosity. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the landscape, but her mind was preoccupied with thoughts of Tyrion's brother, Prince Tyr. "You still haven't told me what happened with Tyr," she prompted gently, her eyes sparkling with intrigue. Tyrion sighed, a sorrow creeping onto his face as he recalled the events of the past few months. "Ah yes, Tyr and his mysterious white lady," he began, his voice laced with anxiety. "It all started during his journey to the northern villages. He was sent there to oversee some trade agreements. But it seems he found something far more captivating." Polly leaned in closer, eager to hear more. "What do you mean?" "Well," Tyrion continued, "he returned from that trip a changed man. He spoke of a woman draped in white, with hair like spun silver and eyes as deep as the ocean. He claims she appeared to him in the forest, guiding him through the woods as if she were a spirit of the land." Polly's eyes widened. "A spirit? You can't be serious." "I am," Tyrion replied, chuckling. He described her as ethereal, almost otherworldly. After that encounter, he became infatuated. All he could talk about was her grace, her laughter, and how she seemed to understand him in a way no one else ever had. In the heart of a lush, enchanted forest, where the whispers of ancient trees mingled with the laughter of streams, Tyrion sat cross-legged on a mossy patch, his eyes wide with concern. Polly and Diggory, his closest friends, leaned in closer, eager to hear his words. "I'm telling you," Tyrion insisted, his voice low and urgent. "That white lady is none other than the Northern Witch. I can feel it in my bones. She's been lurking around, and I fear she has dark intentions for Narnia." Diggory stood before Prince Tyrion, the weight of his memories heavy on his heart. The lush landscape around them, vibrant with life and magic, seemed to pulse with the echoes of the past. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts before speaking. "Prince Tyrion," he began, his voice steady yet tinged with the gravity of his revelations. "Polly and I have indeed been to Narnia before, long before you were born. We were here during its very creation, witnessing the birth of this wondrous land under the light of Aslan." Tyrion's eyes widened, curiosity mingling with disbelief. "You were there? You saw Aslan?" Diggory nodded, a soft smile breaking through the somberness. "Yes, we did. It was a time of unimaginable beauty and joy, but it was also a time when darkness first crept into Narnia. You see, we brought your parents, Frank and Helen, into this world. They were the first of many who would come to know the magic of Narnia." "But what of the witch?" Tyrion asked, his brow furrowing. "What do you know of her?" Diggory's expression darkened, the memories flooding back like a storm. "Jadis, the White Witch, is a being of pure malice. When we accidentally brought her into Narnia as well, we unleashed a darkness that has haunted this land ever since. She is cunning, powerful, and utterly devoid of compassion. We should expect nothing good from her." Tyrion frowned, his brow furrowing in thought. "But Tyr thinks she's magnificent. He believes she can help us unite the kingdoms." "Unite?" Diggory echoed, shaking his head. "She's a sorceress. She thrives on chaos and despair. We can't trust her." Tyrion nodded vigorously. "Exactly, but Tyr refuses to listen. He's so enchanted by her beauty and power that he can't see the truth. He's even planning to bring her here and make her his queen when he becomes king." Polly gasped, her eyes widening. "That's madness! If he succeeds, Narnia will be plunged into darkness. We must find a way to stop him." Diggory's mind raced. "What if we confront Tyr? Show him the truth about the Northern Witch? Maybe if he sees her true nature, he'll change his mind." "Polly." "Diggory," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You must understand that Tyr's actions are not merely the whims of a jealous brother. He seeks to unravel the very fabric of our land, the ancient laws of Narnia, which bind us as siblings and rulers, are in jeopardy." Polly, her brow furrowed with concern, exchanged a glance with Diggory. "But surely there must be a way to reason with him, Tyrion. He's your brother." "Brotherhood means little to Tyr now," Tyrion replied, his eyes darkening with the weight of his fears. "He dreams of ruling alone, of casting aside our shared legacy to reign with his White Lady, a specter of power that blinds him to the truth. He believes that by cutting down the apple tree, he can sever the ties that bind us, and with them, the laws that govern Narnia." Diggory stepped forward, his voice steady. "Then we must confront him. We cannot allow him to dismantle what your parents built, what Narnia stands for. We must remind him of his duty." Tyrion shook his head, a bitter smile playing on his lips. "Duty. Tyr has long forsaken that. He sees only his ambition, his desire for control. I fear that confronting him may lead to more than just a war of words. He may seek to eliminate me entirely." Chapter 6. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Prince Tyrion of Narnia stood tense at the entrance of his cozy cottage. His heart raced as he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps crunching through the underbrush. He turned to his companions, Polly and Diggory, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity and concern. "Silence," he whispered urgently, raising a finger to his lips. "I hear people approaching. We have no time to escape. You must hide. In the wardrobe." Polly's eyes widened in surprise, while Diggory nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The wardrobe stood in the corner of the room, its wooden doors slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of the enchanted world within. Without hesitation, they rushed toward it, their hearts pounding in sync with the approaching footsteps. As they squeezed into the wardrobe, the familiar scent of cedar enveloped them, mingling with the faint aroma of adventure. Tyrion closed the door softly, plunging them into darkness. The muffled sounds of the outside world faded, replaced by the rhythmic thumping of their hearts. "Who could it be?" Polly whispered, her voice barely audible. "Enemies, perhaps," Tyrion replied, his voice steady despite the tension. "Or even worse, my brother with his white lady." As Polly and Diggory huddled together in the dimly lit wardrobe, the scent of cedar and mothballs enveloped them, creating an atmosphere of both comfort and tension. Tyrion, the young prince of Narnia, whispered nervously beside them. They had come to his cottage for a convenient discourse, but it seemed that fate had other plans. Through a narrow slit in the wardrobe door, they peered out into the cozy yet chaotic room. The creaking of the floorboards announced the arrival of Prince Tyr, his armor glinting in the soft light. Behind him marched a group of soldiers, their expressions stern and resolute. But it was the figure trailing behind them that caused Polly and Diggory to hold their breath. The White Lady glided into the room, her ethereal beauty marred by an unmistakable aura of malevolence. Polly's heart raced as she recognized her, the very witch they had unwittingly released during their last adventure in Narnia. Her long, flowing gown shimmered like moonlight, but her eyes, dark and piercing, held a promise of danger. "Is it really her?" Diggory whispered, his voice barely audible. Polly nodded, fear creeping into her heart. They had thought they had left the witch behind, banished to the shadows of their memories. Yet here she was, a specter of their past, ready to weave her dark magic once more. Prince Tyr's voice echoing through the room. The soldiers stiffened, their attention fully on the witch. "What news do you bring, my lady?" The witch smiled, a chilling expression that sent shivers down Polly's spine. "I bring tidings of power, dear prince. Together we can reclaim what was lost. Narnia will bow before you, and I shall have my revenge on those who dared to thwart me." Polly and Diggory exchanged worried glances. They knew they had to act quickly. The witch's return could spell disaster for Narnia and for the friends they had left behind. Tyrion, sensing their anxiety, whispered, "We have to warn someone. We can't let her take over again." In the dim light of the cottage, shadows danced along the walls as Prince Tyr's voice echoed ominously. "First, we must eliminate Tyrion," he declared, a sinister edge to his tone. "Only then can I reign without him." The air thickened with tension as Polly, Diggory, and Tyrion, hidden within the wardrobe, exchanged worried glances. Tyrion's heart raced. He had always known Tyr harbored ambition, but to hear it spoken so plainly sent chills down his spine. The wardrobe felt like a prison, the wooden slats pressing against him as he fought to remain silent. Polly's hand gripped his arm tightly, her eyes wide with fear. Diggory, ever the brave one, whispered, "We have to find a way to warn the kingdom." Tyr continued, oblivious to the trio's presence. "I thought I could find him here, but it seems he has escaped my grasp." His voice dripped with frustration. "No matter, I will hunt him down, and when I do, the crown will be mine." As they listened, Polly's mind raced. "We can't let him do this. Tyrion, you have to get out of here," she urged in a hushed tone, but Tyrion shook his head, knowing that leaving the safety of the wardrobe would mean facing Tyr's wrath. Tyr's eyes scanning the space with a predatory gleam. The trio held their breath, praying he wouldn't discover their hiding place. "I will not rest until I have what is rightfully mine," he muttered, pacing the room. "Tyrion will pay for standing in my way." Chapter 7. As the echoes of Prince Tyre's laughter faded into the distance, Polly, Diggory, and Tyrion exchanged glances filled with a mix of relief and urgency. The cottage, once a sanctuary, now felt like a ticking clock, each second urging them to make a decision. Tyrion, his heart racing, took a deep breath. "We have to move fast. If we stay here, Tyre will come back with his soldiers and that white witch. We can't let him find us." His voice trembled slightly, but determination shone in his eyes. Polly nodded, her mind racing. "But where do we go? The woods are dense, and we could easily get lost." Tyrion's brow furrowed as he considered their options. "I know the southern trails better than Tyr. If we head south, we might find a way to the river. From there, we can follow it to the village. They'll have people who can help us." Gory, ever the voice of reason, chimed in. "But what if Tyr has scouts? We can't afford to be caught." Tyrion's gaze hardened. "We'll have to be smart about it. We can use the cover of the trees and move at night. Tyr won't expect us to take the southern route." With a plan forming, the trio gathered their meager belongings. Polly grabbed a small satchel filled with bread and cheese, while Diggory picked up a sturdy walking stick. Tyrion led the way, his heart pounding with both fear and excitement. As they slipped out of the cottage, the moonlight bathed the forest in a silvery glow. Shadows danced around them, and the rustling leaves whispered secrets of the night. They moved cautiously, staying low and quiet, their senses heightened by the thrill of escape. Hours passed, and the trio navigated through the underbrush, guided by Tyrion's familiarity with the terrain. The air was thick with tension, each snap of a twig sending shivers down their spines. They paused occasionally, listening for any signs of pursuit, but the night remained eerily calm. Finally, as dawn began to break, they reached the edge of the woods. Before them lay a wide river, its waters glistening in the early light. Tyrion's heart soared. "We made it," he whispered, a grin breaking across his face. But just as they were about to step forward, a chilling voice echoed through the trees. "You think you can escape me so easily?" It was Prince Tyre, his silhouette emerging from the shadows, flanked by his soldiers and the White Witch. Panic surged through Tyrion, but he quickly turned to his friends. "Run! Get to the river!" Without hesitation, they dashed towards the water, their hearts pounding in unison. The chase was on, but Tyrion was determined. He would not let Tyr's evil grin be the last thing he saw. They had come too far to turn back now. Chapter 8. Tyrion, Polly, and Diggory found themselves in a desperate race against time. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, growing louder with each passing moment. "Jump!" Tyrion shouted, his heart pounding in his chest. Without a second thought, they leaped into the icy water, the shock of the cold sending a shiver through their bodies. The current was strong, pulling them swiftly downstream, away from their pursuers. But as they floated, laughter turned to panic when the water began to churn violently beneath them. Tyrion's eyes widened as he realized they were heading straight for a waterfall. "Hold on!" he yelled, adrenaline surging through him. The roar of the water grew louder, drowning out their cries. In those fleeting seconds, Tyrion spotted a slender twig jutting out from the water's surface, a lifeline in their moment of peril. "Polly! Diggory! Grab onto me!" he shouted, reaching out with all his strength. His fingers brushed the twig, and he felt a surge of hope. Polly and Diggory, their faces pale with fear, instinctively reached for Tyrion, their hands clasping tightly around his arm. The water surged around them, pulling them closer to the edge. "We can do this," Tyrion urged, his voice steady despite the chaos. With a final, desperate lunge, Tyrion grasped the twig, feeling its rough bark dig into his palm. The three of them clung together, hearts racing, as the world around them blurred into a cacophony of rushing water and the distant shouts of their pursuers. As the cascading water roared around them, Tyrion, Polly, and Diggory took a moment to catch their breath. The world above was a blur of white foam and mist, but here on the solid rock, they felt a strange sense of calm. The twig, now floating away in the torrent, had been their lifeline, a fragile connection to hope in the chaos. "Is everyone okay?" Tyrion asked, shaking off the droplets that clung to his hair. His heart raced, not just from the fall, but from the thrill of adventure that pulsed through the air. Polly nodded, her eyes wide with excitement. "That was incredible. Did you see how we just whoosh down the waterfall? I thought we were done for." Diggory, ever the cautious one, glanced around their new surroundings. The rock they stood on was surrounded by lush greenery, vibrant ferns and bright wildflowers that thrived in the misty environment. "We are inside of the waterfall. We need to be careful. This place could be dangerous," he warned, his voice steady but laced with a hint of awe. As they took in their surroundings, a shimmering light caught their attention. Just beyond the waterfall, hidden behind the curtain of water, was a cave entrance, glowing with an ethereal blue hue. Curiosity sparked within them, and without a word they moved closer, the sound of the waterfall drowning out their whispers of wonder. "Should we go in?" Polly asked, her adventurous spirit igniting once more. Tyrion exchanged glances with Diggory. It could be a treasure or a trap, he mused, but the allure of the unknown was too strong to resist. With a collective nod, they stepped through the waterfall, the cold spray enveloping them as they entered the cave. Inside, the air was cool and filled with the scent of damp earth. The blue light pulsed gently, illuminating the walls adorned with ancient carvings that told stories of a time long past. Chapter 9. As the golden light enveloped them, Tyrion, Polly, and Diggory stood in awe, their hearts racing with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. The majestic figure of Aslan, the great lion, towered before them, his mane shimmering like the sun itself. His deep voice resonated through the air, rich and powerful, yet filled with warmth and kindness. "Welcome, my dear children," Aslan said, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "I have called you here for a purpose, one that only you can fulfill." Polly, still grappling with the wonder of their sudden arrival, furrowed her brow. "But how did we get here, Aslan? One moment we were in our world, and now we stand before you in this magical place." Aslan chuckled softly, the sound like a gentle rumble of thunder. "It is simple, dear Polly. When the heart is true and the spirit is brave, the journey between worlds is but a whisper away. You were summoned because I believe in your courage and your capacity for love." Tyrion, his eyes wide with curiosity, stepped forward. "What do you need us for, Aslan? We're just ordinary kids." "Ah, but it is the ordinary that often holds the most extraordinary potential," Aslan replied, his gaze piercing yet comforting. "There is a darkness threatening this land, a shadow that seeks to extinguish the light of hope. I need your hearts, your friendship, and your bravery to help restore balance." Diggory, who had always felt a connection to Aslan, felt a surge of determination. "We'll help you, Aslan, whatever it takes." Aslan nodded, his expression proud. "Together, you will embark on a quest that will test your resolve and strengthen your bonds. Trust in one another, and remember that even the smallest act of kindness can create ripples of change." With that, Aslan gestured, and the landscape around them began to shift. Lush green hills rolled into view, dotted with vibrant flowers and sparkling streams. The air was filled with the sweet scent of adventure. "Your journey begins now," Aslan declared. "Follow the path ahead and let your hearts guide you. I will be with you, always." Polly stood before Aslan, her heart heavy with worry. "Aslan," she began, her voice trembling, "is there any way to undo the evil that Prince Tyr has wrought by cutting down the protecting tree? The balance of our world hangs by a thread." Aslan, the great lion with a mane that glowed like the sun, regarded her with deep, wise eyes. His presence was both comforting and formidable, a reminder of the power he wielded. "Polly," he said, his voice resonating like a distant thunder, "no deed may be undone. Every action carries its weight, and the consequences of Prince Tyr's choice will echo through the ages." Polly's heart sank at his words. She thought of the once vibrant lands of Narnia, now shrouded in darkness, the laughter of children replaced by the chilling silence of despair. But what will become of us? Will Narnia be lost forever? Aslan's gaze softened, and he leaned closer, his breath warm against her cheek. Narnia will indeed face a time of darkness, but there is hope. A prophecy speaks of 4 siblings, 2 boys and 2 girls, who will arrive when the time is right. They will rise against the witch and restore the light to this land. Polly felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. You mean they will save us? Yes, Aslan affirmed, his voice steady. They will conquer the darkness that has fallen upon Narnia. But remember, their journey will not be easy. They must be brave and true, for the path ahead is fraught with trials. As Polly absorbed his words, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Though the shadows loomed large, she understood that the light would return, guided by the courage of those destined to fight for Narnia's future. With a grateful heart, she nodded to Aslan, knowing that while the past could not be changed, the future still held the promise of redemption. Chapter 10. Prince Tyrion stood before the majestic figure of Aslan, the great lion. His golden mane shimmered in the dappled sunlight, and his deep, wise eyes held the weight of ages. Tyrion's heart raced with a mix of hope and dread as he sought answers about his brother Tyr and the fate of their beloved realm. Aslan, Tyrion began, his voice trembling. What will become of Tyr? And what of Narnia? Is there still hope for him? Aslan regarded him with a solemn expression, the air around them thick with the gravity of the moment. Tyrion, your brother's choices have cast a long shadow over Narnia. Tyr, in his ambition and desire for power, has unwittingly set a curse upon this land. The witch, with her dark magic, has taken hold, and her reign shall persist until the time is right for the curse to be lifted. Aslan's golden mane shimmered in the soft light of the Narnian dawn, casting a warm glow over the gathering of friends. Polly, Diggory, and Prince Tyrion listened intently, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and hope. Tyrion, Aslan began, his voice deep and resonant. Your brother Tyr is cunning and relentless. He seeks power and will stop at nothing to ensnare you and your friends. But fear not, for I have prepared a sanctuary, a place where the shadows cannot reach you, and the darkness that plagues Narnia cannot invade. Polly exchanged a worried glance with Diggory. What is this place, Aslan? How can we find it? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Aslan smiled gently, his eyes twinkling like stars. It is a hidden glade, known only to those who believe in the light. It lies south beyond the whispering woods, where the trees sing and the rivers flow with laughter. There you will find the protection you seek. Tyrion, feeling a surge of determination, stepped forward. We will go there, Aslan. We will not let Tyr's darkness consume us. But how do we know we will be safe? The strength of your bond will shield you, Aslan replied. Trust in one another and let your hearts guide you. The path may be fraught with challenges, but together you will overcome them. Remember, the light within you is stronger than any shadow that seeks to engulf it. Diggory nodded, feeling a sense of purpose wash over him. We won't let Tyr win. We'll find this glade and protect Narnia from his evil. Aslan's gaze turned serious. Time is of the essence. Tyr's plans are already in motion. You must leave at once. Follow the path of the sun and let the whispers of the woods lead you. I will be with you in spirit, guiding your steps. Chapter 11. As Tyrion, Polly, and Diggory emerged from the shadowy confines of the cave, the sunlight dazzled their eyes, illuminating the vibrant landscape that stretched before them. The air was filled with the sweet scent of wildflowers, but the tranquility was short-lived. Across the glistening river, they spotted the unmistakable banners of Tyrion's brother, Tyr, fluttering in the breeze. A knot of anxiety tightened in Tyrion's stomach as he recognized the troops gathering on the opposite bank. Quick, we need to hide, whispered Polly, her voice trembling with urgency. But before they could retreat, Tyr's sharp eyes locked onto them. A sinister smile crept across his face as he raised his arm, signaling his soldiers to advance. Capture them, Tyr commanded, his voice booming across the water. The soldiers, clad in gleaming armor, began to march toward the riverbank, their intentions clear. Panic surged through the trio as they realized the danger they were in. "Tyrion, what do we do?" Diggory asked, his voice a mix of fear and determination. "Run!" Tyrion shouted, and they dashed along the riverbank, searching for a place to hide. But the soldiers were relentless, and soon they reached the water's edge, ready to cross. However, the river was no ordinary stream. Its currents roared with a fierce power, swirling and churning as if it were alive. As the first soldiers stepped into the water, they were immediately swept off their feet. The current was too strong, pulling them away from their intended target and toward the looming waterfall that cascaded into the abyss below. "Look!" Polly cried, pointing in horror as the soldiers struggled against the water. One by one, they were carried downstream, their shouts of alarm mingling with the roar of the falls. Tyrion, Polly, and Diggory watched in disbelief as chaos unfolded before them. Tyr, realizing his plan was unraveling, shouted orders. But the river had other ideas. The soldiers, once a formidable force, were now flailing helplessly, their armor weighing them down as they were dragged toward the edge of the waterfall. "Let's get out of here," Diggory urged, pulling Tyrion and Polly away from the scene. They ran deeper into the woods, the sounds of the river and the soldiers' cries fading behind them. As they ventured further, the weight of their escape began to lift. They had narrowly avoided capture, but the reality of Tyr's ambition loomed over them like a dark cloud. In the shadow of the ancient trees, Prince Tyr stood at the riverbank, his heart heavy with frustration. The once tranquil waters now roared, swollen and turbulent, a barrier between him and the children who had stumbled into their world. He glanced at the witch beside him, her dark cloak billowing like storm clouds as she surveyed the scene with a calculating gaze. "Let them run," she said, her voice smooth yet laced with a hint of malice. "They will never return to Narnia. This land is not meant for them." Tyr clenched his fists, feeling the weight of her words. "You underestimate their spirit," he replied, his tone firm. "They are brave and resourceful. They will find a way back." The witch turned to him, her eyes glinting with a predatory light. "And what if they do? They will be met with our power, and I will take my rightful place as the ruler of Narnia." He hesitated, the allure of her promise tugging at his ambition. "It is not just your regiment, but ours," he corrected, his voice steady. "We are in this together." A sly smile crept across her lips, one that sent a shiver down Tyr's spine. "Indeed, dear prince, together we shall reign, and together we shall crush any who dare oppose us." As the river continued to surge, Tyr felt a pang of doubt. The witch's cunning was undeniable, but he could not shake the feeling that there was more at stake than mere power. "Very well," he said, his voice resolute. "We will let them go for now. But mark my words, my lady. If they return, I will not stand idly by while you seek to claim this land for yourself." The witch's smile widened, revealing a glimpse of her true nature. "Oh, Tyr, you are delightful. But remember, in this game of power, it is the one who plays the longest who wins." With that, they turned away from the river, the sound of rushing water fading behind them. Chapter 12. As Polly, Diggory, and Prince Tyrion ventured deeper into the whispering woods, the sunlight danced through the leaves, casting playful shadows on the ground. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the gentle rustle of leaves seemed to whisper secrets of the forest. The trio felt a sense of adventure bubbling within them, each step echoing with the promise of discovery. After a while, they reached a fork in the path. The left branch loomed dark and foreboding, shrouded in shadows that seemed to stretch and twist like the gnarled branches overhead. The right path, however, was bathed in golden light, inviting and warm, as if it were beckoning them to follow. "Let's take the right path," suggested Polly, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "It looks so much friendlier." Diggory nodded in agreement, his heart racing with anticipation. "I'd rather not wander into the darkness. Who knows what could be lurking there?" Prince Tyrion, with his regal demeanor, smiled at his friends. "Then it's settled. We shall follow the light." As they walked along the sunlit path, They shared stories of their adventures, laughter ringing through the woods like a joyful melody. The light seemed to grow brighter with each step, illuminating the vibrant colors of the flowers and the rich greens of the trees. It felt as though the very essence of the forest was cheering them on. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain, the children stood at the dead end, their hearts heavy with confusion. The path they had followed, once bright and promising, now seemed to lead them into a trap. Prince Tyrion, with his noble brow furrowed in thought, turned to his companions. "We followed the path of the sun, just as Aslan instructed, but where do we go from here?" Polly, her mind racing, recalled the words of Aslan. He said our journey would include challenges, and that our light would be stronger than the threatening darkness. "We must believe in the light." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was a spark of determination in her eyes. Diggory, ever the thoughtful one, stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the shadows that loomed around them. "What if the darkness is not to be feared, but faced? Aslan's words suggest that we must confront it to find our way." He pointed to a narrow, winding path that veered off into the shadows, barely visible against the rocky backdrop. After returning to the previous crossing of the paths, the children exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. The dark path seemed ominous, a stark contrast to the sunlit journey they had undertaken thus far. Yet Diggory's words resonated within them. They had faced challenges before, and each time their faith in Aslan had guided them through. With a deep breath, Tyrion stepped forward, his resolve hardening. "If we are to find the light, we must be brave. Together we can face whatever lies ahead." Polly and Diggory nodded, their hearts swelling with courage as they followed the prince into the shadows. As they ventured deeper, the darkness wrapped around them like a thick cloak, but they held onto the belief that their light would shine through. The air grew cooler, and the sounds of the world outside faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Yet within that silence, they could hear the steady rhythm of their hearts, a reminder that they were not alone. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared in the distance, illuminating the path ahead. It danced like a flame, beckoning them forward. "Look!" Polly exclaimed, her voice filled with hope. "The light is real! We must keep going!" With renewed determination, the children pressed on, the light growing brighter with each step. The shadows began to recede, and the rocky terrain transformed into a vibrant landscape filled with colors they had never seen before. Flowers bloomed, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of adventure. As they emerged from the darkness, they realized that the challenges they faced had not been obstacles, but stepping stones toward their destiny. They had learned to trust in the light, and in doing so, had discovered the strength that lay within themselves. Chapter 13. As the sun began to rise, casting a golden hue over the rugged landscape, Polly, Diggory, and Prince Tyrion found themselves standing at the base of the towering mountains. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and the distant sound of rushing water. The path ahead was steep and treacherous, winding like a serpent through the rocky terrain. "Are you ready?" Polly asked, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. She looked at her companions, determination shining in her eyes. Diggory nodded, gripping her hand tightly. "We have to stick together, no matter what happens." Prince Tyrion, though regal in his demeanor, felt a twinge of anxiety. He had faced many challenges as a prince, but this journey felt different. It was not just about him, it was about the bond they shared. "Together we can conquer anything," he declared, his voice filled with resolve. As they began their ascent, the path narrowed, and the steep slopes loomed ominously on either side. Each step required careful consideration, and they leaned on one another for support. Polly led the way, her heart racing as she focused on the next foothold. Diggory followed closely, his other hand gripping Tyrion's, ensuring no one would slip into the abyss below. The journey was arduous, filled with moments of doubt and fear. They encountered loose stones that threatened to send them tumbling, and sharp winds that howled like ghosts. Yet with each challenge, their bond grew stronger. They encouraged one another, sharing stories of bravery and dreams of the future, their laughter echoing against the mountains. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a plateau. Before them stood a small fortress, its walls glistening in the sunlight like a beacon of hope. The structure was ancient, adorned with vines and flowers that seemed to bloom in defiance of time. It radiated warmth and safety, a stark contrast to the harsh journey they had just endured. "Look at that!" Polly exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "We made it!" Diggory grinned, feeling a surge of pride. "We did it together." As Polly, Diggory, and Prince Tyrion stepped through the grand entrance of the fortress, they were immediately enveloped by an atmosphere of wonder. The towering walls, adorned with intricate carvings of mythical creatures and lush landscapes, seemed to whisper tales of bravery and adventure. Sunlight streamed through the high-arched windows, casting a warm golden glow that danced across the polished stone floors. "This is it!" Tyrion exclaimed, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "This is the refuge Aslan spoke of, our Ark." His eyes sparkled with excitement as he took in the breathtaking sight. The fortress was not just a stronghold, it was a sanctuary, a place where hope could flourish amidst the chaos of the outside world. Polly and Diggory exchanged glances, their hearts swelling with a mix of awe and relief. They had journeyed far, facing countless challenges, and now they stood on the threshold of safety. "Archenland," Tyrion continued, his voice filled with conviction. "This is our home, a land of strength and unity. Here we shall gather our allies and prepare for the battles ahead." In the heart of the fortress, they found a grand hall, its ceiling soaring high above them, adorned with tapestries that depicted the history of Narnia. Tyrion gestured toward a large table at the center, where maps of the surrounding lands were spread out. "We must strategize," he said, his tone shifting to one of determination. "The darkness that threatens our realm will not wait for us to be ready." Chapter 14. In the high tower of the fortress, Polly, Diggory, and Prince Tyrion stood side by side, their eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. The view from their lofty perch was breathtaking. To the south, the endless expanse of the desert shimmered under the sun, while to the north, the familiar landscapes of Narnia sprawled out before them. Yet what caught their attention was not the beauty of their homeland, but the ominous sight that loomed over it. A thick blanket of darkness enveloped Narnia, swirling like a storm cloud, casting a shadow over the vibrant lands they once knew. The trees that had danced in the wind now appeared as mere silhouettes, and the rivers that sparkled with life seemed to have lost their luster. The air was heavy with an unsettling silence, a stark contrast to the joyous sounds of Narnia they had cherished. Diggory, his brow furrowed in concern, broke the silence. This must be the curse that Prince Tyrion brought upon Narnia. It has manifested itself, and now we can see its true form." His voice trembled slightly, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the enchanted land of Narnia, Prince Tyr stood at the banks of the river, his heart pounding with a mix of determination and anger. The water shimmered like 1,000 diamonds, but it held memories of betrayal and loss. His brother Tyrion had escaped with 2 human children, and Tyr was resolute in his mission to reclaim his throne and restore order to the kingdom. The air was thick with tension as Tyr surveyed his army, a formidable force of centaurs, fauns, and talking beasts, all loyal to him. They were eager to follow their prince into battle, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Tyr raised his sword high, the blade catching the last rays of sunlight, and called out to his troops, "Today, we reclaim what is ours. We will not rest until Tyrion and those who aided him are brought to justice." The soldiers cheered, their voices echoing through the trees, a chorus of loyalty and strength. Tyr turned his gaze to the river, where the current flowed steadily, as if mocking his frustration. He remembered the last encounter, the laughter of the children, the defiance in Tyrion's eyes. It was a moment that had changed everything, and now it was time to confront the consequences. "Prepare the boats," Tyr commanded, his voice steady. They would follow the river upstream, where Tyrion had vanished. The water would guide them, and the whispers of the trees would tell them where to go. As they set off, the prince felt a surge of hope. He believed that justice would prevail, and that he would bring his brother back, whether to the throne or to face the consequences of his actions. After they crossed the winding river, the landscape transformed around them. Chapter 15. As Prince Tyr's army trudged deeper into the whispering woods, the air thickened with an unsettling silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Shadows danced ominously around them, and the once vibrant hues of the forest faded into an inky blackness. The soldiers, weary from their relentless pursuit, exchanged anxious glances, their torches flickering like the last breaths of hope. "Split up," Tyr commanded, his voice sharp and authoritative. "We must find them before they slip away entirely." The soldiers nodded, their faces pale with fear of the unknown. They ventured down both branches of the path, hearts pounding in their chests. The right path twisted and turned, leading them to a dead end, a gnarled tree with roots that twisted like serpents. Frustration bubbled within Tyr as he kicked at the dirt. "Fools! They must have gone left." He turned on his heel, leading the remaining soldiers to the left path, where the terrain steepened and the darkness seemed to thicken. As they ascended, the air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding wrapped around them like a shroud. The mountain loomed ahead, its peak lost in the swirling mist. Tyr's heart raced with a mix of determination and dread. "We cannot turn back now," he muttered under his breath, pushing forward despite the treacherous incline. Back on the mountain path, Tyr's frustration boiled over. "They cannot have vanished. They are just children." His soldiers, now equally exhausted and frightened, offered no comfort. The darkness pressed in around them, and the once clear path became a labyrinth of shadows and uncertainty. However, as they began their ascent, the darkness enveloped them like a thick shroud. The path, once clear, became obscured by the shadows, and the air grew colder. The sounds of the forest faded, replaced by an eerie silence that sent shivers down their spines. With each step, the terrain grew more treacherous, rocks crumbling beneath their feet, and the wind howling like a banshee. Hours passed, and the darkness deepened. Tyr's heart raced as he sensed the unease among his men. Whispers of doubt began to circulate, and the once united front started to fracture. "We should turn back," one soldier urged, his voice trembling. "The mountain is cursed. We cannot risk our lives for mere legends." Tyr hesitated, torn between his ambition and the safety of his men. He gazed up at the towering peak, shrouded in darkness, and felt the weight of responsibility pressing upon him. "We cannot let fear dictate our fate," he declared, but deep down he felt the uncertainty gnawing at his resolve. Suddenly a loud crack echoed through the night, followed by a cascade of stones tumbling down the mountainside. Panic erupted among the soldiers, and Tyr realized that the mountain was not only dangerous, but alive with its own perils. "Fall back," he commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We must return." With heavy hearts, the army descended, retracing their steps in the dim light of their torches. The journey down felt longer than the ascent, each soldier grappling with the weight of disappointment. Chapter 16. From the craggy pinnacle of their hidden eyrie, Prince Tyr and his white lady watched. Below them, Narnia lay shrouded, not in the gentle twilight of approaching dusk, but in an oppressive, unnatural gloom. It was a lingering scar, a residue of a power long challenged, a darkness Tyr had hoped to bend to his own treacherous will. But now something was changing. The murky pall that had clung to the land for seemingly endless seasons, woven from shadows and despair, was beginning to fray. It wasn't the natural transition of night yielding to dawn. This was a deeper, more fundamental shift. Like a tattered cloak slowly being drawn back, the oppressive gloom receded, revealing not the expected verdancy of midsummer Narnia, but a vast, silent expanse that seemed to drink the light. His white lady stood beside him, a statue carved from moonlit marble, her platinum hair rippling like spun ice in the imperceptible breeze. Her eyes, the color of glacial lakes, were fixed on the dissolving darkness. No surprise etched upon her perfect features, only a profound, almost ancient contemplation. Then came the cold. It wasn't the crisp bite of autumn, nor the biting wind of winter. This was a numbing, alien frigidity that seeped into the very bone, carrying no scent of frost, no promise of briskness. It was a cold that seemed to swallow sound, silencing even the distant rustle of unseen creatures. A cold infused with an unnerving emptiness. Tyr shivered, a rare tremor that nettled him. "What is this?" he demanded, turning slightly to his lady. The darkness was familiar. This is something else. A single pale flake drifted past his nose, catching the last vestiges of the dissolving gloom before vanishing into the growing chill. Then another, and another. Soon a silent procession of them was descending from the heavens. Softly yet relentlessly, the white dust began to settle on the dark rocks of their eyrie, on the skeletal branches of stunted pines, on the very air itself. Tyr stared, his breath misting before him. "Snow," he breathed, the word a foreign taste on his tongue. He reached out a gloved hand, letting a few flakes land on the leather. They were perfect, intricate crystals, impossibly cold. "How can this be?" he scoffed, more to himself than to her. "It is the heart of summer. The sun, when it finally breaks through this emptiness, it should be burning the fields dry, not summoning winter." His white lady's voice, when it finally came, was a whisper of ice, carrying no warmth, no inflection of wonder, only cold observation. "The old order gives way, Tyr. The shadows merely hid what truly was to come. This is a deeper chill." Tyr's gaze flickered from the falling snow to her impassive face. "A deeper chill," he mused, a slow, predatory smile finally touching his lips. The initial unease was being replaced by a cunning flicker in his eyes. He was a creature of ambition, and in chaos he saw opportunity. "And what does this deeper chill bring, my lady? A new throne to seize, a new realm to mold in our image? Perhaps a winter that lasts for far longer than a mere season." The snow fell without pause, silent and relentless, painting the retreating darkness with an unnatural, pristine white. And as Tyr watched, a new, colder kind of ambition began to bloom in his treacherous heart, as frigid and unforgiving as the Narnian summer that was now being stolen away. Chapter 17. In the heart of Narnia, where the snowflakes danced like tiny fairies in the brisk winter air, Prince Tyr stood on the balcony of his castle, gazing out at the vast expanse of white. The landscape was transformed into a shimmering blanket of frost, each tree and hill adorned with glistening icicles. Yet as beautiful as it was, a heavy weight settled in his heart. How could one live in such eternal coldness? He pondered aloud, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. There would be no harvest, no fruits to ripen under the sun's warm embrace. How would our people survive? And how could I survive? Just then a soft voice floated through the air, as delicate as the snowflakes themselves. It was the White Lady, a figure of grace and wisdom, who had watched over Narnia for centuries. She appeared beside him, her flowing gown blending seamlessly with the winter landscape. "Ah, dear Prince Tyr," she said, her eyes sparkling like the stars above. "You see only the surface of winter's beauty, but there is life beneath the snow." Tyr turned to her, curiosity igniting in his gaze. "What do you mean, my lady? Surely the cold brings death to the land." "Not death, but a different kind of life," she replied, her voice soothing like a gentle breeze. "In this eternal winter, the wild animals thrive. The forests are filled with creatures that adapt to the cold, their coats thick and warm. They roam freely, and the land provides for those who know how to seek it." "But what of the people?" Tyr pressed, his brow furrowed with concern. "How can they find sustenance in such a barren land?" The White Lady smiled, her expression filled with understanding. They must learn to hunt and gather. The rivers may freeze, but beneath the ice, fish still swim. The forests may seem silent, but they are alive with the rustle of fur and feather. In this winter, there is a different kind of harvest. Chapter 18. In the heart of Narnia, where the snow blanketed the ground like a thick white shroud, Prince Tyr stood before the White Witch, his breath visible in the frigid air. The once vibrant land was now a desolate winter wasteland, and the weight of despair hung heavily upon his shoulders. He had followed her instructions to the letter, believing that by cutting down the ancient protection apple tree, he would liberate Narnia from its long-standing curse. Instead, he had unwittingly unleashed the full fury of her reign. "You promised to free Narnia from this ancient bondage," Tyr implored, his voice steady despite the chill that seeped into his bones. "I have done as you asked, yet all I see is the endless winter you have wrought. Where is the freedom you spoke of?" The White Witch, draped in her flowing white robes that shimmered like frost under the pale light, regarded him with a cold, calculating gaze. Her lips curled into a smile that held no warmth, only the sharpness of ice. "Foolish boy," she replied, her voice smooth as silk yet laced with malice. "This is my time of regency. The throne of Narnia is mine, and I shall not share with anyone, least of all a naive prince who believes in promises made by a creature like me." Tyr's heart sank as her words echoed in the stillness of the frozen landscape. He had hoped for a glimmer of compassion, a hint of the benevolence she had once promised. Instead, he faced the stark reality of her ambition. "But the people of Narnia suffer," he argued, desperation creeping into his tone. "Children cry for the return of spring, and the creatures of the forest languish in despair. Is this the legacy you wish to leave?" The witch's laughter rang out, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Tyr's spine. "Legacy? My dear prince, I am not bound by the whims of mortals. Their suffering is but a small price to pay for my dominion. You should have known better than to trust a sorceress." Tyr clenched his fists, feeling the weight of his choices pressing down upon him. He had believed her words, had thought that perhaps she could be swayed by reason. But now he realized that he had been a pawn in her game, a mere tool to further her dark ambitions. "Then I will not stand idly by," he declared, his resolve hardening. "If you will not free Narnia, I will find a way to do it myself. I will rally the creatures of the land, and together we will rise against you." The White Witch's expression darkened, her eyes narrowing with fury. "You dare threaten me, Tyr? Know this, I will not be so easily challenged. You will regret your defiance." The witch stood tall, her silver hair flowing like a river of light, and her eyes glimmering with ancient knowledge. "You dare challenge me, Tyr?" she intoned, her voice echoing through the trees. "Your ambition blinds you to the truth of your own heart." With a flick of her wrist, the witch summoned her magic wand, a powerful artifact imbued with the essence of the forest. "For your betrayal, I shall cast you into a fate worse than death," she declared. Before Tyr could react, she hit him with her wand. In an instant, he was transformed into a stone statue, forever frozen in a pose of arrogance, his expression one of shock and disbelief. The witch turned to the gathered crowd, her voice steady and resolute. "Let this be a lesson to all who dare to betray the bonds of loyalty and trust. Power gained through treachery will only lead to ruin." Chapter 19. As the golden rays of the sun bathed the fortress of Ark in a warm glow, the laughter of Polly, Diggory, and Prince Tyrion echoed through the courtyard. The three friends had spent the morning exploring the lush gardens that surrounded their home, their imaginations ignited by tales of adventure and bravery. Polly, with her wild curls bouncing as she ran, suggested they play a game of knights and dragons. Diggory, ever the thoughtful one, pondered the best way to make their game more exciting. Prince Tyrion, with his noble spirit, was eager to lead them into battle against imaginary foes. Just as they were about to embark on their fantastical quest, a gentle breeze swept through the courtyard, carrying with it a sense of magic and wonder. Suddenly the air shimmered, and there stood Aslan, the great lion, his golden mane glistening in the sunlight. The children gasped in awe, their hearts swelling with joy and reverence. Aslan's presence was both comforting and powerful, a reminder of the adventures they had shared in the past. In the land of Archenland, the sun cast a warm glow over the rolling hills, a stark contrast to the icy grip that had long held Narnia in its relentless winter. Polly and Diggory stood beside Prince Tyrion, their hearts heavy with the news Aslan had just shared. The great lion, a figure of wisdom and strength, had gathered them to impart a message of both sorrow and hope. Aslan, Tyrion began, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. What shall we do now that Narnia is lost to us? Aslan's golden eyes sparkled with understanding. Dear Tyrion, though Narnia may be ensnared in a curse of winter for 100 years, your path lies ahead in Archenland. It is here that you must build your kingdom, a realm that will thrive and flourish, free from the shadows that haunt Narnia. Tyrion, his spirit resilient, stepped forward. But what of Narnia? Can we not help it? Can we not fight against the winter? Aslan's gaze softened. The battle for Narnia is not yours to wage at this moment. The curse must run its course. But remember, every winter eventually yields to spring. Its time will come again. But for now, focus on the legacy you will create here. Diggory, ever the dreamer, looked at Tyrion with a spark of determination. You can build a kingdom that honors Narnia, one that remembers its stories and its magic. You can ensure that its spirit lives on through you and your descendants. Aslan nodded, a hint of a smile gracing his majestic face. Indeed, Tyrion, your descendants will be kings and queens of Archenland, a lineage that will endure until the end of time. Let your hearts be filled with courage and your hands with purpose. With a newfound sense of duty, Tyrion straightened his shoulders. Then I shall begin. We shall build a kingdom that stands as a beacon of hope, a place where the tales of Narnia are cherished and remembered. Aslan stepped back, his presence a comforting warmth. I will be with you, guiding you in spirit. Trust in yourselves and in your people. The bonds you forge here will be the foundation of a great legacy. Diggory, Aslan began, his voice a harmonious blend of strength and gentleness. I have an important task for you, one that will shape the fate of both Narnia and your world. Diggory, still reeling from the wonders he had witnessed, felt a sense of purpose swell within him. What must I do, Aslan? He asked, his heart racing with anticipation. The apple tree in your world will survive, Aslan explained. It will grow tall and strong. From its wood you must craft a wardrobe, a portal that will allow 4 siblings to enter Narnia. Diggory's eyes widened. A wardrobe? But why is this so important? Aslan stepped closer, his presence both comforting and commanding. Narnia is in peril. The White Witch seeks to plunge it into eternal winter, and only those 4 can save it. The wardrobe will serve as a doorway, a bridge between our worlds, allowing them to come here when the time is right. Diggory nodded, understanding the weight of the task before him. I will do it, Aslan. I promise. With a final nod, Diggory felt a surge of determination. He envisioned the apple tree, its branches reaching towards the sky, and the wardrobe standing proud in his home, a gateway to adventure and bravery. Aslan's words echoed in his mind, igniting a flame of hope that would guide him through the challenges ahead. When Diggory opened his eyes, he stood before the apple tree in his backyard, its branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. The memories of their adventure in Archenland flooded back to him, the majestic presence of Aslan, the vibrant colors of the land, and the weight of the choices they had made. Polly, standing beside him, looked up at the tree with a mixture of wonder and confusion. Do you think what we experienced was a dream or reality? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Diggory pondered her question, his gaze fixed on the tree's lush green leaves. I don't know, he replied slowly, but it felt real as this tree before us. He reached out to touch the rough bark, feeling its solidity beneath his fingertips. Maybe it was both, Polly suggested, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Dreams can be real in their own way, can't they? They teach us things, Show us what we truly desire. Diggory nodded, recalling the moment when they had seen the curse over Narnia. A hint of sorrow in his voice, he answered. We learned that not all dreams lead to happy endings. Polly smiled gently, understanding the burden he carried. Perhaps that's the point. We grow from our experiences, whether they're dreams or reality. Just like this apple tree, which stands strong despite the storms it has weathered. As they stood in silence, the tree seemed to shimmer in the fading light, its leaves whispering secrets of the past. Diggory felt a sense of peace wash over him. Whatever it was, I'm grateful for it, he finally said. It brought us closer to understanding ourselves. Polly beamed at him, her spirit lifting. And to Aslan, she added, he's always there, guiding us, whether we see him or not. With a newfound sense of clarity, Diggory took a deep breath, embracing the reality of their journey. The apple tree, a symbol of their adventure, stood tall and proud, reminding them that dreams and reality are sometimes intertwined, shaping who they are and who they will become.